up until the mid 90s, which was just 25 years ago, you could travel anywhere, pretty much anywhere in the country, and pull into a gas station, and you'd pump the gas first, and then you go in and pay. I mean, I remember a few times, with drunken escapades when I was younger, kind of in the middle of the night type stuff with friends that, we did do the old consume and zoom type thing that they talk about. But I mean, that stopped. But when you think about it, it's just shocking that you could fill up your tank. And I remember this one time near the town where I grew up, I was filling up my tank at a BP back then, British Petroleum, boron type place, and I go inside. I mean, there's like 20 people in line. So I mean, like, people, you just had the option if you wanted to be a dishonest person to do it. And like I said, I'm not proud of the fact that 3 or 4 times in my life I did do it, but those were the days. And it's just kind of interesting how times change. There's another one that this one was in the it was 1989, and I think it went on a couple years after this. So somehow I was barely old enough to have a credit card, but I was old enough to have a credit card. But somehow I got a gas card, and I think it was like a Texaco at the time. But whatever it was, one of the stations that they used was Gulf, Gulf. So I don't know if it was Texaco or not, but I know that I went to Florida after I kind of like faded out of college. I ended up going back to college and graduating, but right after high school, I graduated when I was 17 in 1986. But right after high school, I kind of went to a number of colleges and just couldn't really find my way. And long story short, I lived on the East Coast, and I wanted to go to Florida. That was where my dreams were going to come true. So I had like a couple $100. I think my stepdad gave me $250, and I went all the way to Florida. But I had this gas card, and of course, within 10 days, I needed to come back with my tail between my legs, because obviously, at 18 or 19 years old, it was a scary situation. I was dead broke, and I had no chance. I mean, it was overwhelming. And I had gone down there, and I think I stayed with a high school friend who had left high school a couple years before graduation, but he was down there with his family, and so I stayed at their house for a couple days, and obviously it was not going to work out. I mean, it was just like, I realized that, oh my, hard to explain. But so long story short, when I came back, I knew that the Gulf gas stations with this credit card, that they didn't have the computer system set up. So what you would do back then is you just give them the card, and they'd like cha-ching it, like with a thing where they move their hand from left to right, and they make a copy of it. And then at the end of the month, I guess they would just send in all those copies, and you get a copy, and they'd send a copy into the credit card company, and that's how they would get reimbursed. But it was the weirdest thing, because everyone else, if your card was dead, which mine was just about, it wouldn't work at the other ones because I had missed a payment or two. But every other place, you would just go in. It was computerized at that time. And so I knew there were a number of Gulf gas stations on the way back that I was going to be good, because what happened is they would send it. This is the craziest thing. They would send every month. They would send all the retail outlets and gas stations and bars and restaurants and stores. They would send them a booklet, and it had all the credit card numbers that were no good. And so come to think of it now, I think I must have had a MasterCard, and I knew that the Gulf stations only took their MasterCards on the cha-chingy type things, where they go back and forth and go, and they didn't have a computer. So, because there was another story to this. So I made it all the way back with my tail between my legs, and the rest is history, but it's a long story after that. And but there was another thing. So you used to go, I don't drink anymore since 1995, but I used to, I didn't even like drinking, but I did it anyways, just I didn't have my first drink till I was 18, actually. And senior, just after high school. Maybe it was when I was a senior, I think so. It must have been when I was 17, right at the end of 17. I had never had a drink until my senior year of high school. But so with the credit card thing, I remember, and this was like 2 years later, so this had to be the early 90s. So I had a credit card, must have been a new one, or I don't know what the hell happened. But all I know is this: I could buy drinks at this bar in town and a couple other places because they had the booklet and they didn't have the computer yet. And so I remember being at the bar and I wanted to buy a round of drinks, and the guy takes the card, looks into the booklet, and matches up my numbers to see what's in the booklet. And my number wasn't in there yet, so it wasn't going to default for another couple of weeks until I missed a payment or whatever. I mean, the payment was already no good, but the booklet, how fast can you get a booklet in those days, right? So it was always on a little bit of a delay. So I was done with the card, but I could still get a couple meals at various places and get beer. So I still remember to this day, and this had to be, probably 1991, maybe 90. And this guy behind the bar, I give him the credit card. I mean, I look like 3 or 4 younger than I was at the time anyways. And so I was only like 22-ish. And he looks in the booklet, and the number on my credit card wasn't in the booklet. And then he rung up the order, and we got the beers. So it's amazing how times change. And there are a number of things like that. When I was probably 15 or 16 years old, a couple years before that, they didn't even really have credit cards back then. And so like when you'd go on a vacation with your family or go traveling, what you would do is, and I still don't understand really why this happened, but you would go to like the AAA office or somewhere else and you would get traveler's checks. There used to be a big ad on TV: American Express traveler's checks, don't leave home without them. So, but that's just crazy. You'd go to the beach and you'd have like $500 in traveler's checks, like $100 each. And so like, why would you need traveler's checks instead of cash? Well, because like if you lost the traveler's checks, you could get them replaced. It's just weird. Strange. I mean, it's all strange now. I mean, when the new $100 bills come out, they always look strange, but then the old ones look strange after a short time. So times are always a-changing, and like even back then, if you were into sports and you like to bet, you really wouldn't know the result of games. You'd have to call like a 1-800 number or a 1-900 to get the results, because SportsCenter was barely on, and you couldn't even get all the results, like real-time results. And like even up until the late 90s, they had this little pager thing for people that were bookies or bettors that it was still a novelty then, like where it was a score ticker for sports. Nowadays you can get immediate information on everything. But same thing with like the stock market. There were a lot of people up until, some people up until like the last 10 years ago or so, maybe the last 10 or 15 years ago, that they wouldn't know what their balances were on their brokerage account. They would get their statement mailed to them every month, and that's how they would really know exactly what their balances were. I remember this one major newscaster in about 2008 when the financial crisis hit. He's like, well, a lot of people, when they get their statements at the end of the month, they're going to realize just how bad it is. And so he was basically speaking to what I'm saying to right now, that it's not like people check their balances 24 hours a day like they do now. And that was 2008 when he made that comment. And I knew exactly what he was talking about, because that's how most people did it. And when it first changed over where you could even call and get the information over the phone, I remember I was in law school for a year in 1995 in Michigan, not at the University of Michigan, but it was a school in Michigan. It would basically take anybody. And at the time, I didn't have the greatest grades out of high school and college. But I mean, I was intelligent. I didn't have the top tier grades. And I remember I bought some stock down there in 1995. And I was constantly calling up I think I had Schwab back then. So I'd call up and you'd enter like a code, like beep, 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 beep. Like each digit stands for a letter. And so you'd enter like the whatever corresponded to the 4-digit ticker at the time, assuming it was a 4-digit ticker, and then it would read you a number over the phone, and that was the price of the stock. And I was doing that all the time. And so that was 1995. And then by 2000, when the internet came around, I didn't get on. My mother was on a computer and on the internet in 1995, and I didn't get on until Christmas of 2001. And I still remember, it was a new thing for me because you could get that real-time stock price just on your computer screen, and it kind of got me into trouble a little bit because everyone thinks they're Warren Buffett and they think they're an investor, but when you got that flashing stock price, for me, I'm pathological with it because the flashing stock price determines my mood, and I even know better, and I'm pathological about it. So like, if you own a business, like I'm driving across the country right now, and so there's hundreds of thousands of businesses that I'm driving past. I mean, literally hundreds of thousands of businesses, millions probably. And if every one of these privately owned businesses had a stock ticker, a price that was flashing on the outside of their building, people would look at those businesses a lot differently than they are. But because they don't, the business is what it is. It's worth what its cash flows are worth, and there's improving businesses and declining businesses. But that flashing stock ticker on every publicly traded company really makes people make poor decisions because they do short-term thinking. And it's gotten me in trouble before, but I made a significant score 2 years ago that has helped me. But I was always looking at tricky situations because I know the psychology of stock prices, and I know that people generally are selling out at the bottom. They're all in and maxing out at the top. They're not afraid to put money in at the all-time highs when everyone's feeling good about it, but at the lows when everyone's scared, they're scared too, and so they get out. So I did make a significant score on the Hertz stock. Life-changing, but it's still a tricky situation. And like I said, I advise most people when it comes to stocks to just put it in an index fund or go with Berkshire Hathaway. I mean, you might as well just go with Warren Buffett and I mean, no one's really got hurt ever buying Berkshire Hathaway. I mean, he's 92 years old, I think. He's at least 90. But you can't really hurt yourself, and that company will go on for 100 years. And, you could buy Exxon or Google and just never make another decision. So it's tricky. Most people will get in trouble because of that flashing stock price.